Hello, everybody. Welcome to our tutorial 3. We'll be talking about chunking in Mandarin today. I will tell you something about the units called prosodic phrases and prosodic words, and then I will give you examples of commonly weakened morphemes, which I promised last time. Okay, I will try to say this long sentence in one breath. We certainly cannot speak without interruption because we are living beings and we have to breathe. That was enough. Like it or not, when speaking, we need to make a break from time to time. It is rather natural and it's hard to imagine how speech would sound without breaks. There are also other reasons for making a break than just breathing. We can make a break from time to time for other reasons, as I said. For instance, when we enumerate some items, such as things we want to buy. Jane needs to buy bread, milk, jam, and butter. To sum up, while speaking, for various reasons, we cut our speech, divide our speech into shorter units, and we make some breaks between these units. In script, there are sometimes commas and sometimes not. Mom, I can't find my shoes. There is a comma. My good old friend William is a wonderful singer. There's no comma. I mentioned some shorter units. So what are these shorter units? You may remember this slide from a previous tutorial. Speech is linear, but to describe it, we think of it as a hierarchical structure. Speaking of prosody, we can establish prosodic units of several levels. At the lowest level, there is syllable, then there is prosodic word, prosodic phrase, and at the highest level is finished utterance. Utterance is a pronounced sentence, which is unique. So we'll start with finished utterance. Its boundary is marked by a sentence punctuation mark, either period or exclamation mark or a question mark. So it is easy to recognize. Here are examples of finished utterances. Let me play them.
地上都是水，
This is a declarative.
水，地上都是水，
And the next one is a question.
你去不去？你去不去？
This is not loud enough.
你去不去？
Okay.
你去不去？
So what does the end of a finished utterance sound like? There is some kind of break. We use various devices, boundary cues, to make clear in our speech that an utterance begins and that it ends. One of them, the most striking one, is a silent pause. You may not need any more explanation about that. Then there is a more tricky one. It's called final lengthening, and this is a slight prolongation of the last item. It's very important, and it is language universal. And finally, there is some intonation contour, especially the end of the unit. It can be, for instance, non-falling or falling. And remember, there is a rather complex interplay in Mandarin between tones and intonation. These cues are usually used in combination, not, you don't use just a single one, but use the whole bunch of them. Here are further examples. In the first sentence, you will hear a quite distinct prolonging of the syllable xian. Let me find my mouse. Sorry for that. Here it is.
汽车我已经保险了，汽车我已经保险了。
You can hear that the syllable 显 is very long. Because it's in the third tone, you may not hear it so clearly, but it's very long. Then the next example.
你要这个吗？不要。
There is, in the first sentence, in the question, there is a non-falling intonation pattern required by particle mark questions. And in the second, in the reply, there is a falling intonation pattern. So it will also tell you that's the end of the utterance. Now, as at a lower level, there is a prosodic phrase. I will mark its boundary in English by this green sign, and in Cypriot it would be a double slash. Short utterances usually comprise only one prosodic phrase. For instance, I'll go to the cinema. That's one phrase. If the utterance is longer, the speaker may divide it into two or sometimes even more prosodic phrases. I will go to the cinema, you'll go to work. There may be other reasons for making a break, except for that the utterance is too long. For instance, if you address another person or after a long subject, we've heard already these two sentences. And the pause may also signal that something important was just said or will be coming. Now you listen to me, you don't need to do that. To sum up, breaks mark syntactic boundaries and highlight information structure, and also they allow time for speech planning. Here is a Chinese example.
你看见他就问他好。你看见他就问他好。
There are two prosodic phrases. The first one is finished by a double slash, and you can hear that ta, although it's not stressed, it is prolonged. And there is no pause, there is just this prolongation of ta. Listen to it once more.
你看见他就问他好。
In most cases, prosodic phrase stands as a grammatical unit. For instance, it can be a clause. If you don't feel well, you can stay at home. And it quite often also stands as a semantic unit, which may represent one semantic notion. For instance, big, strong dogs are best avoided. Prosodic phrasing is very important. If you divide your speech into prosodic phrases properly, you will help the hearer to decipher the grammatical structure and information structure of what you are saying. And this is very important. In turn, if phrasing is wrong or absent, it may obscure the understanding of the message or even cause confusion. There are very well-known cases of ambiguity. For instance, if you place breaks wrongly, or if there are no breaks, this may cause confusion. Steve or Sam and Bob will come. Who knows who will finally come? And there are certainly jokes such as, let's eat, Grandma, or let's eat, Grandma. You may not, you may have heard some of these already. I will give you an example of ambiguity in Chinese. This sentence has two possible grammatical structures, and these can be differentiated by phrasing in speech. 印度咖啡很便宜. It means coffee is cheap in India. And the second one is 印度咖啡很便宜. Indian coffee is cheap. So it's two completely different meanings. Now let's look at the end of prosodic phrase. What does it sound like? And I remind you that we examine only non-final prosodic phrase, because if it's final, it's at the same time the end of the utterance, which we already talked about. So there may be a silent pause, which is not so common because it affects the fluency of speech. It just takes time. 印度 咖啡很便宜, it's just kind of bumpy. So what's more common is a phrase fine lengthening. It's milder than at the end of finished utterance, but it's there and it's very important. And finally, there is some intonation contour. It signals that, because it's non-falling, it signals that the speaker will still continue. And again, remember the interplay between intonation and tones. We'll speak about it in our last tutorial. So here's an example of silent pause between two prosodic phrases.
这儿有茶碗，那儿有饭碗。这儿有茶碗，那儿有饭碗。
Here is an example of a fine lengthening. You will hear that the syllable dao is not pronounced as dao. It's pronounced in the neutral tone, but it's quite long. And this signals the boundary of that prosodic phrase.
我知道他不喜欢我。
Once more.
我知道他不喜欢我。
So the last syllable of the first prosodic phrase, this dao, is unstressed and it's pronounced in the neutral tone, but it is prolonged. And this is an example of a non-falling intonation contour.
老舍的作品我都看过。老舍的作品我都看过。
You could hear that the end of the first prosodic phrase keeps rather high. As a result, the word 作品, which has the fourth tone and the third tone, is not pronounced too low, in spite of its tones. We know that the fourth tone ends low and the third tone is low, but none of them is too low because they obey non-falling intonation pattern. And this is a signal, again, that the speaker will still continue.
老舍的作品我都看过。
Okay. Sorry. I will give you two more examples when a prosodic phrase boundary can appear. You can find it after a prepositional phrase, such as in this sentence about the flowers and vase.
把花瓶放在桌子上。
Once more. Oh, that mouse. Have to be patient. It's
把花瓶放在桌子上。
okay. There can be a phrase also, a break after a longer subject, such as here.
他的第二个儿子在北京。
You can hear that the syllable z is prolonged, although it is completely toneless. Okay. Prosodic, what is a prosodic word? This is a still smaller unit. Prosodic phrases are composed of prosodic words. And prosodic word is the smallest naturally pronounced prosodic unit which can be found in fluent speech. Of course, we can divide a prosodic word into syllables, but this is kind of artificial. Now, what's the relationship between a prosodic word and a lexical word? One prosodic word usually contains several lexical words, usually 2, 3, sometimes 4, less often more, and less often just one. In Cypriot, I connect the words within one prosodic word by a dash. For instance, drodze. There is a dash between drodze and sham. Here is this example with the base again. There are 3 prosodic words.
把花瓶放在桌子上。 花瓶放在桌子上。
Okay, 3 prosodic words. Prosodic word is a unit which has an inner coherence. That means that all words within one prosodic word should hold tightly together. They should be pronounced at one blow. 放在, it should be pronounced, for instance, as tightly as the word 桌子. Is there a break between 2 prosodic words? Is there a pause? No. Although there is a space, empty space in script, there is no pause. But if you really need to make a silent pause and to rest, please put it between 2 prosodic words and not within 1 prosodic word. This would be much bigger mistake. The most common type of prosodic word is a full word plus a function word or even more function words. Full word takes up somehow attracts monosyllabic function words, and they together create a prosodic word. For instance, 桌子上 or longer one, 在桌子上. Here are some other examples of prosodic words. 看他，老实的，看了，去过，不好吃，写书，来北京，你告诉他吧。The last one is pretty long. So, prosodic word is an important unit, and while speaking, please do not pronounce the words one by one like a series of flower pots, as we talked about in the first tutorial, but try to lump the words into prosodic words. 放在桌子上，放在桌子上. So here's the last advice about chunking. Do not neglect it. Why? First, it will help you to organize your speech while planning it. Then, when you make a break in speech, that means, for instance, that slight prolongation at the end of a prosodic phrase or an utterance, you can slightly rest and gain some time. And last but not least, you'll be better understood by your hearers. Speaking about a break at the end of a prosodic phrase or utterance, do not rely just on a silent pause. Learn how to use final lengthening. This is a very useful device, and if you use it, it sounds much more natural than a silent pause. Now, at the end, I will give you some examples of commonly weakened morphemes, as I promised in my past tutorial. Commonly weakened morphemes are syllables, or more exactly monosyllabic words or morphemes, which often readily become weakened, unstressed. For instance, 是, 个, 他, 上. They may be fully pronounced or even emphasized, but only occasionally. In most cases, they are weak. And there are many of them. Why to learn them? If you consistently pronounce these words with full tones, it may sound awkward, unnatural, and accented. And this is something you do not want, probably. Such words are most often unstressed, weak. That means they have short duration, hardly any tone or even no tone, and the vowels and consonants are pronounced in a sloppy way. Further, because they are weak, they cannot stand alone. Oh, there should be double N, sorry for that. They always have to find something stronger to cling to. For instance, 上 would cling to 桌子, and together these words create a prosodic word. Here are examples of single words which belong to commonly weakened morphemes category. So these are single words, not morphemes. They are morphemes, but they can stand as single words. Personal pronouns 我,你,他. Then classifiers and measure words such as 个, 本, 快, 见. Prepositions such as 在, 给, 到, or 把. Monosyllabic prepositions 上, 下, and 里. Conjunctions such as 跟, 和. 3 be verbs, that is 是, 在, and 有. And then several formal adverbs 就, 很, 都, 也. The negative 不 in A0A questions 来不来, 来不来. And finally, the second syllable in trisyllabic or quadrisyllabic words 火车站, 资本主义. And also there are cases of full words which can become weakened if they are not important in the given context. These on this slide you will find morphemes which are not single words, and the expressions below you would not find in a dictionary, but they are always pronounced as one word. These are reduplicated verbs. The second item is pronounced in a neutral tone, 看看, 说说. Then directional complements, 上来, 爬上, 哭起来. Then some resultative complements, 打开, 看见, 记住. But watch out, some resultative complements keep full pronunciation. 看完, 吃饱. So the situation is more complicated than with directional complements, which are always weak. Then a negative 不 in a potential form of a verb. 出不来, 走不动, 看不见. I will give you some examples. This is a sentence which comprises past position 上 and the verb 是, and both of them are pronounced weak.
地上都是水，地上都是水。
Here is an example of personal pronouns. Listen especially to the first 他, which is very, very weak.
我没法问他好，我见不到他。我没法问他好，我见不到他。
Okay. I told you that personal pronouns in most cases like to be weak, unstressed. But if the speaker wishes so, he or she can stress them, emphasize them, such as in this romantic conversation.
你喜欢谁？我喜欢你。
You can hear that 你 is very prominent, stressed. Once more.
你喜欢谁？我喜欢你。你喜欢谁？我喜欢你。
Okay, and the last interesting case is full words. In most cases, functional words become weakened because they just don't have so much of meaning. But full words, which do have semantic meaning, not just grammatic meaning as functional words, may become also weakened when they are not important in the given context for the speaker. For instance, take this word 汽车. I will give you an example. Of course, this phenomenon has something to do with information structure and new and old information and so on. So here's that example.
这辆汽车是我们的第一辆汽车。
The word 汽车 is repeated within the same sentence, and the second instance gets unstressed, which is quite logical and natural because it's repeated.
这辆汽车是我们的第一辆汽车。
If it's pronounced fully like 汽车, like in the first part of this utterance, it would not sound naturally. Okay, that's all for you today, and Thank you for attention, and I see you at our last tutorial, which will deal with pronunciation in sentences with intonation.